My father's 60th birthday celebration was meant to explode with joy, a symphony of laughter and reminiscence. Instead, it was shattered by a scream that ripped through the festive facade. Not the innocent peal of my daughter, but the shrill, accusatory cry of my sister. "Stop acting crippled," she spat, her voice laced with venom. "You just want everyone to pity you." Then, in a move that made my blood run cold, she lunged for my 6-year-old's leg brace, tearing it off with a savage force as if it were a mere stage prop. The sickening clang of metal on tile echoed through the room as my daughter tumbled to the floor. But it wasn't the sound that haunted me, it was her cry. Not a wail of pain, but a small, broken sound, like a wounded animal that had given up hope of rescue. My family, my supposed protectors, simply watched. My mother, her face a mask of indifference, took a delicate sip of her wine. My brother offered a smug smirk. My aunt, that viper, actually laughed, a quick, cruel sound of twisted delight. I lunged forward, my heart pounding in my chest, but my daughter, her face streaked with tears, instinctively tried to crawl toward me, dragging her fragile leg uselessly behind her. "Daddy, help!" she whimpered, her voice thick with fear. I reached her just as my sister folded her arms, a triumphant smirk twisting her features. "For God's sake, she's faking it," she declared, her voice rising in indignation. "You're all letting her run this house with her little act." Suddenly a shadow fell over us. A hand, firm and cold, landed on my sister's shoulder. It was Dr. Caldwell, my daughter's surgeon. He'd arrived early to discuss her upcoming follow-up appointment. He had witnessed the entire appalling scene. "Ma'am," he said, his voice quiet but carrying the weight of authority. "You just assaulted a child with a severe orthopedic condition." The color drained from my sister's face. My family fell silent, not out of guilt, but from the chilling fear of exposure. And something inside me, a long-dormant instinct, finally snapped awake. My sister had always harbored a peculiar animosity toward my daughter. Never openly, never to the point of outright cruelty, but just enough to taint every moment with a subtle, insidious poison. "She plays it up," she'd whisper. "She limps more when people are watching. She's manipulating you." Whispers behind my back, whispers that morphed into accusations that devolved into cruel family jokes. But the last few months had been different. The barbs had become sharper, more pointed. My daughter had started to dread visiting my parents' house, avoided family dinners, and recoiled from any contact with my sister. Every time I pressed her for an explanation, she would simply shrug, whisper, "She's mean," and quickly change the subject. Children often conceal their truths, especially when they fear hurting someone they love. I had dismissed it as mere sibling rivalry, the kind of petty jealousy adults pretend doesn't exist between grown siblings. But tonight, as I witnessed my sister rip off my daughter's brace, I saw something else in her eyes. Rage. Not a fleeting outburst, but something deeper, older, something that had been carefully cultivated and nurtured. My father's reaction was equally disturbing. He looked not outraged, but irritated, not by the assault, but by the disruption. "Didn't need the drama tonight," he muttered, his voice dripping with annoyance. And suddenly, all the fragmented pieces I had blindly ignored began to fall into place. My sister's constant need to prove my daughter was exaggerating her condition. The way she would corner her when she thought no one was watching. The way my daughter would desperately avoid her at every gathering. I had been willfully blind, but Dr. Caldwell had seen the truth. He knelt beside my daughter, gently examining her leg while the room held its breath. "This wasn't an accident," he stated, his voice devoid of emotion. I turned to my sister. She met my gaze, trembling, desperately trying to gauge how far I was willing to go. She still didn't understand. My anger was simmering into calculation. Dr. Caldwell confirmed that the impact had worsened the injury. "Her knee is unstable," he explained. "She could have torn the graft." My sister's face went ashen. She opened her mouth to protest, but I raised a hand, not to silence her, but to pause her because I needed information, not noise. "Why did you do it?" I asked, my voice dangerously low. Her lips tightened into a thin line. "Because she lies about everything?" she retorted, the rehearsed words sounding weak and unconvincing. A script she had practiced but clearly didn't comprehend. So I dug deeper. In the days that followed, while my daughter rested at home, I launched a silent investigation, not driven by revenge, but by an insatiable hunger for the truth. Phone records, family texts, old group chats, even screenshots my cousin had once sent me as a joke. They all became pieces of the puzzle. Patterns began to emerge. Threads began to align. For months, my sister had been poisoning the well, telling the family that my daughter was exaggerating her condition, that I was raising her to be fragile, that I was training her to seek sympathy, that the surgery itself had been unnecessary. She wasn't merely voicing doubts. She was meticulously orchestrating them. I delved further. I reviewed daycare security footage from the weeks leading up to the surgery. There she was, my own sister, attempting to force my daughter to run without her brace, desperate to prove something. My daughter limped, cried, begged her to stop. Yet, my sister had relentlessly dragged her forward. I pressed on. I reviewed doctor's notes, school reports, even a teacher's email mentioning that my sister had instructed the staff not to indulge her theatrics. The truth crystallized into one brutal, undeniable reality. My sister didn't merely suspect my daughter was faking. She needed her to be faking, because if my daughter wasn't lying, then she was. And she couldn't stomach the thought of a world where she wasn't the center of attention, the object of pity, the wounded martyr. As the evidence mounted, a cold, sharp edge formed within me, not a desire for violence, but a craving for precision. And I knew exactly where to cut. I didn't confront her immediately. I waited. I waited until the family had gathered again at my parents' house, the same house where they had laughed while my daughter cried on the floor. I walked in, carrying a thick folder, meticulously organized, weaponized. My sister attempted a smile, but it was a mere twitch, a fractured facade. My father looked irritated. My mother looked curious. My brother looked bored. I placed the folder on the table. "Before we eat," I said calmly, "you all need to see something." I opened it, laying out the daycare footage, the text messages, the call logs, the teacher's emails, the medical notes, the truth she thought she had buried beneath layers of family loyalty. My sister's face contorted in slow-motion horror. "This is fake," she whispered, her voice trembling. "It's dated." I replied, my voice unwavering. Stamped, recorded, archived. She shook her head, desperately searching for an escape that wasn't there. My father finally snapped. Why are you doing this? He demanded, his face flushed with anger. It's over. No, I said softly. It's documented. And then I placed the final page on the table, Dr. Caldwell's signed statement detailing the injury, the damage, the fact that her actions could have caused permanent disability, a legal report, a mandatory one. My sister's knees buckled. She sank into a chair, trembling uncontrollably. You're not really going to? She whispered, her voice laced with disbelief. I didn't answer. I didn't need to. My sister lunged forward, grabbing my arm. Please, she begged, her voice cracking with desperation. We're family. I looked at her hand, then at her face, then gently, deliberately removed her grip. You made yourself a stranger the moment you hurt my child. Her eyes flooded, not with remorse, but with raw terror. Dad, she cried, turning to him for salvation. Stop him. My father stepped toward me, puffing up with that same tired authority he had wielded throughout my life. This is unnecessary, he declared. We don't embarrass family in public. I met his gaze unflinching. This isn't embarrassment. This is accountability. He froze because accountability was the one word he had always feared. The one thing he had never practiced, never taught, never lived. I picked up the folder, closed it, and handed it to the man standing quietly by the doorway. Dr. Caldwell. His mere presence sucked the air out of the room. My sister collapsed into her seat, shaking violently. No, please, please don't. He nodded to me, professional, neutral, unmoved. Mr. Hale, he said. I'll file everything this afternoon. My sister screamed. Not a loud, dramatic wail, but a sharp, piercing shriek. The sound of a person finally realizing the consequences they had always believed they were exempt from. I didn't look at her. I was already walking away. My daughter's small hand slipped into mine as I reached the door, warm, trusting, safe. And for the first time in years, I felt something close to peace. Cold, clean, absolute. The next day, I took my daughter to the park. She walked slowly, her brace securely fastened, gripping my hand tightly whenever the ground dipped or shifted. She didn't mention her aunt, didn't mention the party, didn't mention the moment she hit the floor. Children heal differently, quietly, honestly. I watched her chase a butterfly, that careful, deliberate limp, a rhythm I knew better than my own heartbeat. She laughed. It wasn't a boisterous, unrestrained laugh, but it was real. Later that night, as she slept soundly, I stood in her doorway and let the silence wash over me. This was what family was supposed to feel like. Calm, safe, steady. Not the toxic loyalty I had been raised on. Not the laughter of people who mistake cruelty for humor. Not the kind of blood ties that choke more than they support. My sister would face consequences, real ones, legal ones, and the rest of the family would face something even worse, the truth about themselves. I closed my daughter's door gently, and as I walked down the hallway, one final thought settled into place. I didn't lose a family. I uncovered what they truly were, and I chose my daughter instead. Thanks for watching. Don't forget to like, share, and comment. Subscribe now to Cheating Stories Insight World for more amazing stories.